Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. and today I'm reviewing the Great Rat Wars from Legends Bushwick Gaming. Actually, in hindsight, I'm pretty sure it's Bushwick Legends Gaming. I think it's BLG, so I think it's... Either way, this is a 3 to 5 player game where your players are going to be controlling characters in this head-to-head. Well, I guess it's not really head-to-head if you're controlling 3 to 5 players. Let's start again. Reset over here, and... Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. and today I'm reviewing the Great Rat Wars from Bushwick Legends Gaming. I'm not going to reset again, we're just going to go ahead and stick with it. This is normally where I'd pause, wait for the splash screen to go, and this is a 3 to 5 player game experience where players are taking control of a variable number of characters in the game. Depending on the player count, you'll be taking control of different numbers of characters, but you'll have the rats over here, the rats which I have set up over here, some of the human characters. For the sake of, well, just having everything on the table, I don't have absolutely everything set up over here, but this is a prototype, rules, components, all those things have to change, and I'll note that, particularly in this case, some things will be better, some things will be worse, because prototype art, components, all that, but also like painted miniatures and upgraded miniature buildings instead of the tokens you'd otherwise get, so some things better, some things worse, as you look at this experience, this review. With that said, 3 to 5 player game, the general goal of each side is to get to 4 points first. You're trying to get to 4 points first. Each side is going to be getting points in different ways. The rat kings over here, or the rats, are trying to basically kill the human characters. Each time they kill a human character, they get a point. Once they get 4 points, they win. Plain, simple, to the point. Try not to die too much, humans. Past that, the humans are trying to kill the rats. The rat generals are worth 2 points each, so if you kill both rat generals, well, it depends on the player count, there could be more, but if you control 2 rat generals, that's already going to be 4 points right there, and the humans will win. Both sides are trying to get to 4 points. It's 1 point per human, 2 points per rat, or alternatively, 1 point per dumpster as you destroy the various dumpsters in play as well, which is a pro and a con. We'll get that more later, but effectively the dumpsters spawn small little rats that you have to kill, so killing dumpster good, but also if you kill a dumpster, it powers up the enemy general, so killing dumpster bad. Either way, the game sequence is going to involve players taking turns simultaneously on their side. So if you're controlling the humans, the different human players are going to be controlling characters simultaneously as they choose a character to activate each round, and then spend their activations, their basic actions. There's a nice little play rate over here, where each turn the humans are going to get 3 maneuvers. Maneuvers are going to be some basic actions involving moving, searching, things like that, trading goods, things like that in the game, and then also taking specific actions on their player boards. You're going to have a player board over here that's going to have different actions on them, different rows of actions, and you can go ahead and activate those actions, spending a token to put it onto that spot and taking the action on that row. Alternatively, if it's this spot over here, you have to spend an ultimate token to go ahead and do that. It's a more powerful ability, but you have to spend one of your 2 ultimate actions in the game to do that, so you want to take it a bit more seriously. But the humans are acting simultaneously. They're taking their maneuvers, they're moving around the board, they're taking actions, all with the goal of ultimately taking down the dumpsters, tossing a little explosive into the dumpsters to make the whole thing go boom, or taking down the rat generals, but that's going to involve digging through their health, of which they start with 15 or 18 for the 2 on the board over here, and that will level up even further to another 5 on top of that if you destroy enough dumpsters or basically upgrade them along the way. And so you're going back and forth with that sequence. The players are going to take a simultaneous turn, taking those actions, moving around the board. Then the rat generals are going to go ahead and take their turn, and you're going to be trying to essentially, well, accomplish your goals. As the rats, you're trying to overwhelm and swarm the humans and kill them slowly but surely, but eventually killing them. And as the humans, you're trying to either do enough damage to the rat generals while making sure that you have the rat swarms in control enough that they don't represent a constant, ongoing threat to your life and ability to stay walking in this game, or alternatively taking out the dumpsters along the way, or more often a combination therein. As far as the more nitty-gritty aspect of things, like I said already, you're going to be taking maneuvers on your turn. And the 4 maneuvers you can take on your turn is you can use a movement card, which is going to be the more common maneuver you take. You can search a trash pile, which is when you're next to a dumpster, you can start going through the garbage cars to gather various items, which sometimes will be good things for you. Other times you're going to have things like, I don't know, you'll have a extra rat movement, or a broken glass dealing damage to your character. You also have trading in the game, and then finally exploding a dumpster. Those are the maneuvers you can take in the game. And using a movement being the most common, so let's talk about that one. Players have 2 different kinds of movement cards. You can have a starting hand size of 7 movement cards that you can use in the game, and you can go ahead and draw up 2 movement cards at the end of your turn, which means you do need to be mindful if you spend too much time moving, you will slowly be depleting your hand, because if you can take 3 maneuvers a turn, and you're only drawing up 2, either your selections are getting worse and worse, or make sure to pad your occasional maneuvers with other things other than just moving around the board. That said, there's 2 core kinds of movement cards. You're going to have the blue ones over here, which are basically kind of ghost movement, and then the regular red ones over here, which are more standard movement. In both cases, you're going to orient it, do that line on the board, so you have a standard orientation. But from there, you're going to go ahead and look at your character, and move them based on their grid they're in. So if you see a character in a grid over here, let's pretend this character's over here right now, you can follow that grid along any form of movement to say, look, if the character's over here, I can go ahead and move along here. I can move, let's say, if the starting zone is there, I can move up to 4 in a line, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and then continue to go 1, 2, 3. I can go ahead and get over there by moving around that grid. Versus if your character starts here, over here I can move here, but I can't get to this spot on that grid, so I can't get around this, at least not from this angle, nor from this angle, so I'm kind of stuck in this location. That's going to be the way a movement card works. That's also why these blue movement cards can be so helpful. Let's move them just for a situational benefit over here. If we have this card over here, this blue movement card, the blue movement, you can move through things and end anywhere in that grid. So I can move up to 4-way, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then even move, let's say, you know, up over here, over there to that spot. You can move anywhere in that pattern on a blue movement card, regardless of what you move through, allies, buildings, enemies, anything else as you play through those cards. That's the basic structure of a card. Line it up with the board, try to move on the board. If it's a blue card, you can end up anywhere in that zone relative to where you are. And if it's a red card, you have to be able to move along through it to get to the spots you're trying to go to. That is a movement action, and it's one of the more common actions you're going to do as you attempt to position yourself in the game to take down these small little rats that are not that annoying, but will slowly be chipping away at you, to take down the rat generals, which are how you actually win, and to go ahead and find things in the dumpsters and deal with those along the way. Past that, you're taking actions based on your player boards. This is where you're going to have a whole bunch of player characters in the game, each of them with an asymmetric board. There's going to be some standard abilities, jog, throw, rock, and punch, that are going to be common to all the characters. There's going to be the ultimates, which are super powerful, and then there's going to be the actual core actions, which are unique to each character as far as how they move, shoot, deal damage, all those things as you go through different things. You'll have characters that deal a bunch of rain damage, characters that deal a bunch of melee damage, characters that help other characters through their actions. There's a bunch of characters in the game, and they all have their own asymmetric way that they're going to engage with the general structure of the game. And that brings us to the generals, the rats. The rats have the same kind of core concept with one slight difference. The rats are also going to move, although they only move 1 card a turn, but they're also going to, and they have the same movement deck over here, but they're only going to move 1, and then past that, well, just to be clear, not only 1 on this grid, but rather they play 1 card, 1 maneuver a turn, but then past that, you're also going to have these small little rats that can move 1 and deal damage 1 throughout the course of the game, and they're going to spawning every round in those dumpsters, which means if you take out the dumpsters, that's great. Less rats are spawning every single round. The flip side of that is the generals are going to be leveling up instead, so there is a balance and push and play as you go through that. Past that, over here, you're going to have the same general structure to the board. Ultimate actions, common actions, some common actions over here on the left and right over here. Well, just the left as you go through it, and same basic cycle. Now in the game, you're going to be taking turns activating characters. Every single round, your player is going to have, let's say in a 2-player game, for example, in a 3-player game, where you have 2 players controlling sets of heroes, and then 1 player controlling the rats, every round, players are going to have their 3 heroes, and choose 1 character to activate. So for example, maybe the first round, I go and activate the Misplaced Texan, putting some tokens down in the various activations that I use, and then from there, the next time round, I might go ahead and activate one of the other characters, but these tokens stay here until I use all my characters. Meaning, next round I can activate my Deli Cook or my Subway Surfer, but I cannot activate the character that's already been activated until everything clears. Which also means that the enemy generals with their rats as they're spawning will slowly be closing the distance on a character that cannot activate for 3 rounds, so you want to think very carefully about what you do, how you do it, because it's not a simple back and forth dynamic. There is a real thought to what you do in this game to ensure that you can withstand the assault that is about to occur when you leave your person standing in front of a bunch of rats because, hey, look at you, I got a good turn and dealt 7 damage to something, but now I'm about to be swarmed and killed. You want to think very carefully how you approach this game. That is basically the game. A few small things we didn't really get into. We didn't get to every small little detail of everything. The enemy rats generally have 3 health, or just have 3 health. You're going to be slowly ticking them down. Bunch of side things, but the core idea is that you're basically going to be walking around the board, rummaging around, trying to find various extras and goodies and all that, trying to explode the various trash cans that are, well, there's trash cans and dumpsters. Small difference in there. I may have said things differently as I went through it. There's trash cans and dumpsters. You're going to be rummaging through trash for extras. The dumpsters are going to have the rats spawning out, all those small things. But that is basically the Great Rat Wars. A 3 to 5 player asymmetric skirmish game with asymmetric abilities, powers, and all those fun things. And with that, let's go ahead and dive into the review, starting off with ease of play. Ease of play on this one, it's a prototype. This is where the regular reminder that it's a prototype over here. I did not find the rulebook the best overall, and I did actually learn this game online in TTS with the designer first, but even then, diving into the rulebook again so I can actually play it, it still took a little bit to understand some things. It was not the worst, and it had a lot of good examples. I would say this, it had plenty of examples that helped clarify things, but I think the rulebook could use a cleanup to be more absorbable. As someone who already knew how to play, I still had to challenge, I still was challenged at certain parts of it. So it's the kind of thing, again, prototype, this is hopefully not an issue in your copy, but I try to cover the experience I have, not just the experience I hope you have, which is why I mentioned those things. Past that, as far as the gameplay itself, it is officially a 3 to 5 player game. This is a game I have been able to play this at 2 players as well. I have played this both at higher player counts and at 2 players. 2 players does remove some of the interesting aspects of the game because of the simultaneous play nature of things. When you have multiple heroes in play, controlling more heroes at once, you can still have a kind of mimic simultaneous play where I just move across the board here, I take an action, and you're controlling 2 characters alternating actions. You could do that, but it loses a little bit of the sense of teamwork. It is certainly doable, but I do agree that a 3 to 5 player game is better than a 2 player game. I would put 2 players on the box. Like, I would, even if you just do like 2 player variant or 2 player mode. I think this game is totally playable at 2 if you want to. It could be a lot to manage at first, but I think it is playable at 2. As far as what I like, don't like, and can see others not liking, starting off with what I like, which is that simultaneous play. I like the fact that when you're playing through this game, you're not just taking turns with characters, but you can have a few characters going simultaneously who are alternating their sequence of their activation as they work together to help each other. That adds a sense of dynamic interaction, whether you're playing it solo by managing 2 characters yourself, or alternatively whether you're playing as an actual 3 to 5 player game. I find that extra level of interaction where it's not like, well, you take a move and then I take a move. Well, I mean, it still is to a degree, but within their full structure of their turn. Meaning as opposed to a game where I take my full character turn and then you take your full character turn, I can move closer to you, you can do something that moves closer to me, then you can hit that last wrath for 2 damage, that clears the space that I can walk into, we can go back and forth on our individual actions as we take simultaneous play, which adds an extra sense of dynamic to the turn, and also adds a good sense of teamwork as you try to think through and go back and forth. I've seen other games do it, and in general I like it when they do it, adds an extra sense of dynamicness to the cooperation at the table, which I generally enjoy. The powers and abilities and general skirmish structure work well. I don't think it's groundbreaking, to be very clear. I don't think it's groundbreaking in terms of those other elements, but they work well. The board over here has got a lot going on, lots of stuff setting up over here. Setup, by the way, is a beast. We'll come back to that. But lots of things going on this board. And I think overall, the general sense of, your powers and abilities, the turn activation, again, I don't think much of it is groundbreaking, but altogether, it still works well. It gives you variable characters. It gives you characters with their different strengths. It gives you that sense of searching around to find extras. It gives you those little negative surprises as you search for things. And it gives you a sense of teamwork as you face off against an asymmetric side as you take things down. Not groundbreaking, but all of it does work fairly well. The balance of eradicating the dumpsters and empowering the generals is another fun little aspect we have to be mindful of. You kind of always want to take down the things that are spawning baddies. Having a bunch of rats spawn every turn, they're not that strong, but they are overwhelming. Having to spend time, effort, and energy focusing on these irritating little beasts that keep spawning, it's a balance that you have to constantly be on top of because you only have a few actions every single turn, and spending your actions dealing with this flood of rats is, well, frankly, a pain, even when you can deal with it. So you want to take out the dumpsters, but that'll power up the generals. So you want to be mindful of that push and pull, and I like that push and pull because you have a real decision as far as do you want to focus hardcore on taking down 2 generals, or do you want to focus on a bit of management of the enemies while also taking down a general along the way. There is that push and pull, and I overall enjoy that. Overall, I would say that the Great Rat Wars brings it brings a bunch of things to the table that work well together. It's a solid skirmish game. It does everything well. It has the simultaneous play, which I really enjoy, that push and pull of the enemy generals, the strong characters that feel very differentiated in the way they approach it, and overall, it just works well as a 1 versus many skirmish game. But there are things I don't like, which brings us to the what I don't like section, starting off with the rules, setup, and clarity. Rules, again, prototype, so take that into account, but the rules were not the best and not the clearest, and the setup in particular is a pain. Right now, the setup page is in the rulebook. Let me see if I can actually find it. Where's the rulebook over here? If I can show you this over here, the rulebook setup pages right now kind of look like this. We have these pages over here where this is your 3-player setup. This is a lot, and it's not the clearest to go through, and it has these icons over here, and I assume its prototype will be approved upon, and even then, by the way, the 3-player still references this board over here, so you can see where every single thing goes down, every single section, so you can specifically place every structure in the exact right area. The setup is a bit tedious to go through, and isn't particularly rewarding, and just kind of gets in the way. Not the end of the world, but setup, rules, clarity, all that stuff, not the best. Additionally, and again, this could be a prototype issue, I do not know yet, but overall, I found the graphic design to be not the best. And I mean that in multiple senses of the game. The graphic design of the board, this very hex-based system, is a little too much hex-based system, and not really a very attractive or pretty board behind it. It's too much in your face. You also have the various character art and design and rulebook in ways that I felt the graphic design, there's two different aspects to a game in terms of graphic design versus art. The art of the Great Rat Wars I think is fine. It's not necessarily my personal go-to, but I think it's fine. Versus the graphic design, I really hope it does get updated in some way, shape, or form. As it stands, it feels like a game that could use that extra layer of polish, and it does impact my enjoyment of how much I'm in a rush to dive into it. I feel some of those elements could be upgraded. Again, this is a prototype, so if you're watching this review in the future, please make sure to check out the current version or art or assets of the game to see where this lies. I don't know what it will end up with or not, but overall I definitely want the graphic design, much more so than the art, to be something that is improved upon. I'll also say that I'm generally not a fan of the mix of minis and non-miniatures. Now, that's something that does happen in other games, and it's not always an issue. Endless Winter, one of my favorite games, does have that mix of miniatures and not miniatures, but having the heroes and the generals be miniatures, but then the rats are, right now, they're dice. I believe this was supposed to be cardboard standees in the current prototype or final game. I don't love that mix, and especially the way damage is managed on those standees, where you remove different sizes one at a time, doesn't feel like the cleanest system. Not the end of the world, but not my personal preference. And then also I'll say that I'm not the biggest fan of the cycle of, from a gameplay perspective, all my other complaints have been focused on production, graphic design, things like that, and many of those may well be prototype issues that are not present in your final game, but the gameplay aspect wise, I'll say I'm not a fan of the cycle. I like the cycle of activating your characters, I enjoy that, but very often, because of the nature of the fact that your character is going to put themselves in danger and then not be able to activate for a few turns, it does take away some of the moves that could otherwise be more fun moves, so to speak, in a game, because of the fact that when you put a character in danger, they may not have a chance to do much until 3 turns later. And so it limits some of the actions I would typically take in a skirmish game feel too dangerous to do so in the Great Rat Wars in a way that does add tactical planning, but possibly removes some of the funner moments that you might otherwise have. So I don't love that aspect. I don't have a great suggestion as to how to improve it without drastically changing the structure of things, but I didn't love that kind of sense of having a character abandoned between 3 turns. As far as I can see others not liking in the game, first of all, that minimum 3-player count over there, this is one of those things where, again, I think you could play as a 2-player experience, but factor that in as you go for this one. I'll say that the randomness of broken glass and rat spawn cards as you dig through the garbage could be a less fun experience where you're trying to find something useful and helpful and instead you take 2 damage or trigger an enemy activation. Those things aren't really fun either. I'll say that there's a timer variant, or I should really say a timer desired way of playing the game. The Great Rat Wars, as you get the rulebook, this is ideally supposed to be a 5-minute timer in place on your turns. That is the recommended way to play. In theory, you can play without it. It's a little unclear in the rules itself whether you could or should. It kind of says, hey, you should play with a timer, which also means you don't necessarily have to. I personally don't prefer playing with a timer. I understand why it exists, and I understand it might be a good thing for others, which is why it's in what I can see others not liking, because I simply just don't play with it, and it solves that problem. But there is I believe is ideally supposed to be played with timed 5-minute rounds, as opposed to taking your time with the actions. It's supposed to lend itself to the chaos in a way which certainly does, but not in a way that improves the experience, at least for myself. As far as final thoughts on the Great Rat Wars, I am fairly mixed on this game, but primarily because of the balance of the fact that it is a prototype, and I don't know what will and won't change from what I currently got to play versus the final game. From a pure gameplay standpoint, this is an enjoyable experience. It's not necessarily best in class, especially as a 1 vs many. 1 vs many is a very specific genre that does not have a lot of games, and that's because they're often harder to table. And so 1 vs many are games that I only have, I think, 2 1 vs many games in my collection, so I'm very picky about those experiences because I don't get to table them often. But I will say that from a pure mechanical standpoint, the Great Rat Wars is fun. It's challenging. It is probably one of the... I think the other 1 vs many games I have are Master of the Universe and The World of Smog. And the great, I guess hidden movement games also count, but I'm thinking more skirmish. But I'd say the Great Rat Wars is one of the more accessible skirmish 1 vs many games I've played, and to that end, it certainly has a way that it stands out. It is easier to dive into, but it also has a lot of reward behind it in terms of the strategic decisions you're making, the way your characters are going to cooperate. There's a bunch of things going on mechanically in this game that work well, that overall, if we're judging this on mechanics alone, I would give this a 4 out of 5. I think it is a very strong mechanical game that has things I like. It has simultaneous play, it has general skirmish things, it has powers and abilities, it has a lot of asymmetry to the experience that will change each time you play it, a lot of fun things that work well. but also I don't rate games purely based on their mechanics alone. A big part of my rating, in fact, my rating definitions are almost exclusively related to my desire to play, of which mechanics are part of it. They're just a factor. Overall, the general presentation of the Great Rat Wars, of where it is right now, does hold it back for me. I don't find myself in a rush to want to play it because of some of those aspects of, the rules, the setup, the graphic design, things like that do get in the way. And also, I don't know, I'm not sure the final game. Let's see if I have them here. The regular buildings over here on the board, regular buildings, look like this right now, which I don't think lends itself quite as much to the table presence. I think these are nicer, but these buildings over here I don't think are quite ideal. And again, prototype, so I don't know where things will end up, which is why I'm very hesitant here. So this one's kind of a mix for me. Right now, in its current form, I'm going to give it a 3.5 out of 5. Mechanically, it is better, but there are things that hold it back and do lower my desire to rush into it. So overall, a 3.5 out of 5. A lot of good here, and some things I'd like to see cleaned up and streamlined before it gets to a final version, ideally. As far as other game recommendations, first of all, I mentioned it already, but Master of the Universe. Master of the Universe is going to give you a fantastic one versus many experience that really just has a ton of variety, tons of powers and abilities. It will cost you an arm and a leg, make no mistake, but it is a very fun experience. And then similarly from Command as well, The Others is a game that this did feel a little reminiscent to, especially the strong asymmetric sides. A lot of elements of the game kind of felt a bit similar of The Others and this one, but that's another one that I don't even know if it's in print, but another Command one versus many experience. In any case, and until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I'll have a link to the crowdfunding campaign down below, and as always, I hope you have a good one.